So this video is going to be about feedback and criticism, which is a part of the mindset which looks at kind of our reactions to being given feedback and criticism. So when you're in the fixed mindset, you're more likely to see criticism and feedback as more of a personal attack. You kind of get on the defensive. You might blame others for the reasons why something has happened that you're being given feedback about or criticised for. You might get aggressive, you get defensive, you might get upset by it and see it as this kind of personal attack. However, feedback is supposed to be constructive. Criticism is also supposed to be constructive, and obviously the person giving the criticism needs to think about how they are giving that criticism so that it's less seen as being a personal attack. And that's largely something we talk to children about in terms of mindset, is not just being able to take that criticism and feedback, but also be mindful of how you give that constructively to other people. But in a growth mindset, you are more likely to see that feedback as a positive thing, because it's giving you information about how you can make progress and move forward. And obviously you're wanting to achieve things when you're using your growth mindset. That's the whole idea, is that you can achieve more. So you're going to listen to feedback. Now, whether you decide to take that feedback on or hear it but think, no, I'm going to do it in this way for whatever reasons, that's perfectly okay. But I think feedback is largely about listening and hearing what people are saying and responding in a way that's informed, and maybe see things that you hadn't seen before, but actually now that it's been brought to your attention, it's a really good point. So it gives more information, and information is power, particularly in a situation like the one in which we're finding ourselves at the moment. So the message that we keep hearing, the feedback that we keep hearing from our government is stay home, support the NHS, save lives. It's a message that will epitomise this period in time. It's basically an instruction, but it also kind of sums up where we are at the moment. So how are we doing in that? Well, the feedback, and again, this may have changed after having put out these videos and these blogs, but the feedback so far from Matt Hancock at the start of all of this, when they were telling us that we needed to stay home, we just had some really, really good weather, and they were finding that whilst the majority of people were abiding by those guidelines and taking on the messages of how dangerous it is to be so close to other people at the moment, they were a little bit concerned about a minority that were still, coming into close contact with each other. And the police had been given regulations that were put in place so that the police could go out and they could get people to move on. And I think there's been some laws as well that allow them to take action if they need to. So that all kind of went very slightly before the Queen's address. So I thought that was very nicely timed, the Queen's address, because it came just before that really good bout of good weather. And it was basically about rallying the country together and giving us the message that, we were in this together and trying to build that solidarity. There's also been party political broadcasts. I've seen the chief medical advisor or officer giving out a message just to stay home and to stay safe, to save our NHS. That's being repeated. There's also been a letter, which I'm assuming that everybody around the country has received, from Boris Johnson, basically using the term levelling with the country, that there are going to be a lot of people that will lose loved ones before their time. So kind of the rhetoric and the language around all of this has been hugely important, because they've got to get the balance right of, stirring up enough emotion within us that we are going to behave in the right way, but also not pushing us so far that the mental health of the nation is going to be, up in arms and really going to take a lot to recover, and not scare people, because we don't want to get back into that panic buying kind of situation. So we're doing well. I think that's the general message, but the message is also that we must persevere. That's another really strong growth mindset term, is perseverance. Keep going even when it's tough. We have to find that strength within us to be able to carry on and get the job done, and we've got to get the job done on this one. So we're doing well. We're not there yet, but if we keep going, hopefully we will start to see a decline in numbers and a decline in deaths, and that will not just happen in this nation but in other nations that are going through the same thing. Changes are being reported daily, and the effect of giving us all the feedback of what's going on and what's happening, it's a way, I guess, of regulating our behaviour, keeping us informed, because people are more likely to behave in this unified way if we are all getting the same feedback. So it's important that everybody is getting the same message, and that message predominantly being to stay at home, which is pretty... it was such an astounding moment when Dr. Catherine Calderwood, who was the Chief Medical Advisor in Scotland, having been at the forefront of this message in Scotland about staying home, was then found to be travelling from her home in Edinburgh to her second home in Fife. And not only once, but also twice. So she was up for a huge amount of criticism and feedback. Understandably so, I think, for what she had done. She did hear that feedback and responded to it in a very emotional and heartfelt way, that she had made a mistake. And I think the plan had actually been for her to stay in post, because Nicola Sturgeon felt that she played such an important part in the process so far that her expertise was needed. But then obviously this criticism of her actions really started to bubble, and I think both of them then saw it as this could become a really big distraction for the really important message that we're sending out here, and could really undo the good that had been done. And so she did step down eventually, and I think that's a moment of criticism that really had to be dealt with very quickly at the time, and to save that message in Scotland. So I think that feedback, like I said earlier, I think feedback is something that is about listening, and that's actually something that many people are not very good at, is actually just listening to messages. And we need to get back to that, being able to hear messages and not just sit within our own skins and have our own opinions, but actually listen to what is being said. And at the moment, the messages are about pulling us together so that we can act as one, and respond in the right way that is going to get us through this.